the speakers who joined us today to speak about the project experiences, and in particular the policy recommendations to STEAM on education. That's the title of today's webinar. Before we start, I would like to take the opportunity, just a few minutes, to talk about the All Digital Weeks campaign, because this event is part of the campaign of this year and actually part of the 5th week of the campaign. The All Digital Weeks campaign is one of the major pan-European awareness-raising campaigns on digital skills for inclusion and accessibility. It's organized by All Digital Network and its members and partners. It's been running since 2010, and since then we have helped about 1.4 million people to get online for the first time or enhance their digital skills, fully exploiting the potential of digital transformation. And every year, we are reaching out over 100,000 Europeans in more than 20 European countries through exciting online and offline events and training opportunities tackling digital transformation. The campaign takes place online, but also offline at different locations: digital competence centers, libraries, community centers, schools, digital education training providers, and other venues across Europe. It involves international and national and local partners and participating organizations from many European countries. The motto of this year's campaign is "Enhance your digital skills," and this is our call to action for all Europeans to benefit from digital transformation. And anyone can join us by organizing an event or training program on digital competencies and you can put your event among the many other events on the alldigitalweeks.eu website. This year's campaign is supported by our institutional partner, the European Union, represented by the European Commission, and we have also corporate partners supporting our activities, namely Microsoft, Huawei Technologies, and Certiport. And the campaign is also supported by many European partner organizations, other European networks, who help promote and disseminate the events and the results of the campaign. As I mentioned, we have 5 thematic weeks, and this is the last week of the campaign. Every week we are focusing on specific topics under which trainings and events are being organized at international and also local levels. And the overarching topic of this week is improving STEM and STEAM skills for the society, and very importantly, encouraging girls' and women's participation in STEM studies and careers. And this is our direct contribution to the implementation of the Digital Education Action Plan, in particular Action 13, namely in the plan, which is addressing this subject. And as you can see, we have a number of events organized during this week, and we are getting close to the end of this week and also the campaign itself. And so today we are organizing this webinar on presenting the policy recommendations to STEAMonEdu, on STEAMon education. And now I would like to invite my colleague, Claudia Matera, Chief Development Officer of All Digital, to present and introduce our speakers today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this session. I'm thrilled to introduce you to the speakers that we're going to engage in this discussion in a few minutes. So first, Professor Achilles Kameas, coordinator also of STEAMonEdu project and professor at Hellenic Open University. Athanasios, Iossifides, that is also with us today. Associate Professor at Hellenic Open University, Esther, Subias, Project Manager at Colectic, Laurentiu, Bunescu, that is Head of Digital Education Programs at Fundatia EOS in Romania, Paolo Russo, Project Manager at Stati Generali, dell'Innovazione, and also, moreover, Spyros Papadakis, advisor and counselor at the Greek Ministry of Education, and Jutta Schneider. In this case, she's also project manager at Hollywood Media and Education. Unfortunately, she had a last-second issue, and she's not going to join us live. I would start with this session, and I would thanks Peter for the screen. I would give the floor now to Professor Achilles Kameas, asking to introduce to all of us the STEAMonEdu project. The floor is yours, Achilles.
Thank you, Claudia. Thank you, Peter, for the introduction. And thank you, Victoria, for organizing this. Good afternoon, everyone. I am happy to be again together with my colleagues from the STEAMonEdu project. It was an exciting project that lasted more than 2 years and ended at the end of 2021. But we do hope that the impact and the results of the project will be useful also for the future. STEAMonEdu, the full title of which was Competence Development of STEAM Educators through Online Tools and Communities, was funded in the context of Erasmus KA3 forward-looking projects in fields of education and training. And the aims of the project were to contribute to innovative and cross-disciplinary approaches in implementing STEAM education by revising and strengthening the professional profile of the teaching profession, and then creating a solid interdisciplinary base for developing STEAM-related competencies, and finally provide a complete framework that integrates all the aspects of teaching STEAM. STEAM, which stands for Science, Technology, Engineering, Arts, and Mathematics, is a complex, novel and complex educational approach, but with the potential for high throughput and high quality results. The idea behind STEAM education is that we combine the disciplines mentioned into and apply them into solving real world problems. Thus, it is, let's say, an integrating approach instead of a separating approach as the other teaching methodologies are. Our project targeted teachers and trainers mainly, and education and training organizations. That is, we didn't target directly students, we target teachers and trainers. We wanted to enable them, to bring them in a better position to teach STEAM. And then, of course, we targeted researchers, educational methods, educational authorities, and any other stakeholder that is related to education. As I said before, STEAM education has the potential to change completely the way we deliver educational services, and that is why in this project we believe that we have to start from the base, from listening to the people who will be the agents of change, the teachers and trainers. The partnership of this project consisted of 7 partners from 6 European countries. They are all represented here, so there is no point in presenting them again, only to say that the coordinator of the project was Computer Technology Institute and Press Diophantos from Greece. Then, as I said, we put educators and teachers in the focus of the project. Therefore, we approached the issue of helping them develop their competencies through 3, let's say, aspects, 3 perspectives. The first is a community perspective. In our view, but also in what resulted from the project, teachers and educators it's better for them if they are members of a community because they are empowered to better apply STEAM education. Then we try to identify what is STEAM education, what is STEAM educator. That is why we worked on identifying the roles and competencies in applying STEAM education as an educational practice, and we developed tools to support this. And finally, we focused on the professional development of teachers and educators through specific training that we offered. And these are the outcomes of the project. We produced tools, we produced frameworks, and we produced policy instruments. In the context of tools, in the group of tools, we designed, developed, and validated the first ever STEAM competence framework for educators, which contains 44 competencies, grouped under 5 different perspectives, each of which represents the role that the teacher and educator has in his or her professional life. To accompany this, we developed also a STEAM readiness self-assessment tool, which was based on the design of Selfie. This allows both organizations and individual teachers to self-assess their competencies regarding STEAM, and then of course, this tool is mapped to the competence framework. Therefore, they can also understand which are the gaps and how they can support the development, even better, their professional development. We also worked on providing STEAM educator profiles using the ESCO approach, and we found out that actually there is no point in producing an educator profile for STEAM educator, but any educator could be a STEAM educator. Therefore, we produced modules for different existing educator profiles, and made them available. Then in the context of framework, first of all, we developed an online platform to support the STEAM educators community. More than 700 members has this community. And then we designed the STEAM education framework, which contained body of knowledge, good practices, OERs, and other guidelines. And finally, to support in practice the professional development of educators, we designed, created, and delivered a massive online open course, followed by a blended course on design, orchestration, and implementation of STEAM education. More than 200 people finished the MOOC, and then out of those invited to continue, around 30 people finished also the blended course and were awarded certificates. But perhaps the most important outcome of this project are the policy instruments, and this is what we're going to discuss today. Apart from the guide of good practices and policies, we also produced a set of policy recommendations for educators and for policymakers in order to make STEAM education more widespread. One finding of this project was that there are not enough policies out there. There is not enough support, actually, so we need to focus on that. Yes, we'll talk about these policy recommendations later. The impact of the project was quite significant. As I said already, more than 700 people joined the STEAM education community of practice. We researched and found about more than 120 educational practices. We collected them from the members of the community, and also more than 50 STEAM education policies. Then, as a result of the training, about 230 people successfully completed the MOOC, and about 30 people successfully completed also the blended course as well. These people were very active during their study. They exchanged more than 58,000 posts within the platform. And finally, they also produced 26 new STEAM education policies, which can be applied in schools, and we consider this a very important contribution of this project. So the community is still there, the platform is still there and is open, despite the project has already finished. If you are interested in joining, this is the website of the project, through which you can find the platform, you can find the MOOC, you can also find all the other project deliverables, which are free and published on the website. Thank you very much again for being with us. I hope that you will have an interesting, you will enjoy your participation through the interesting debate that is going to follow based on the policies. I'd also take the opportunity to thank all our partners in the STEAMonEdu project for the exciting time we had together for those past 2+ years, and we're looking forward into future endeavors on the topic.
Thank you, Achilles. Thank you very much for having provided the overview of this complex project. Actually, it's not easy to condense everything in a few minutes. So thank you also for that. And I would like to continue following our agenda and moving more closely towards policy topic, and so the policy recommendations that we produced. So I want to share with you just very briefly an overview regarding which are the policies that have been published and are at European level, and then we move into the specific STEAMonEdu policy recommendations and open the discussion in our panel. So I share my screen. Okay, you should be able to see it fully. I might enlarge it just a bit. It should be better now. Perfect. Okay, so when referring to European policies, generally speaking, we should start referring to the macro scenario where STEAM competencies are crucial. More specifically, in a sense, it means that, for instance, okay, so now my digital competencies are okay in place here. Super. So we should refer then to the European policies that potentially we all know them, we have heard about them, but it's relevant to mention because they also fit within our discussion. So, for instance, the Green Deal and closer to the digital competencies, the EU Skills Agenda, the Digital Compass that specifically we can describe it as the vision of the European digital transformation by 2030. And the aim there is to educate at least the 80% of the population to basic digital skills, and overall providing a climate neutral technological infrastructure everywhere, so engaging companies also in this process, and public services for, of course, services for citizens. So, and on this topic, of course, also is moving forward the discussion in considering the digital compass also into kind of converting it into a legislative kind of instrument. So this is relevant for us, linked back to the complexity of STEAM education and how it could help in tackling overall those specific issues that we are facing in our modern societies. I would like to mention, because within the All Digital Weeks, Peter was mentioning this week is dedicated to this topic, but of course also to gender balance within STEM. And at the launch event on Monday, I'm glad to link to what the Assistant Policy Officer, Leonie Butnich, just said, highlighting the overall situation of gender balance within STEM careers. That is also linked with STEAM education in general. So she was reminding us that just 1 in 3 graduates in Europe on STEM topics is female, and just the 22% of ICT graduates are female. So for the overview of all the details and etc., I invite you to join our YouTube channel and have a look at her speech. But looking at also the overall situation for us is relevant to keep these points in our heads, as also this might, in a sense, it affects the educators that are operating within the digital field. Regarding then the overall European policies, a quick mention regarding the European education area that operates as a point of reference for union member states, and there are 6 specific focus listed there. So the quality in education and training, inclusion and gender equality, building resilient and forward-looking type of education, and more generally training systems in line with the approach of the Next Generation EU and the COVID-19 recovery plan, supporting teachers and trainers with the European guidance for national career frameworks and the European Innovative Teaching Award. Moreover, the higher education programs for upskilling and making sure that education has a geopolitical dimension. So the vision for the education profession within the European education agenda is one of the highly competent and motivated educators who can benefit from a range of support and professional development opportunities throughout their different careers. So there is a need for, it's clearly said in that sense, for highly competent, enthusiastic and committed professional workforce. And this is linked to what STEAMonEdu worked for. So first aim, of course, is to overcoming overall the teaching shortages and strengthen them, and of course also expand the competencies looking into STEM and STEAM, more specifically, kind of topics. So then moving forward then, it's of course needed to be mentioned the Digital Education Action Plan. And this is where the Commission sets the strategic priorities. And in here, of course, we have specific focuses to highlight. So high-performing digital education ecosystem, where we need, in that sense, digitally competent and confident educators and education and training staff. And in here, of course, STEM disciplines are included. Moreover, to enhance digital skills and competencies for the digital age, so supporting the provision of basic digital skills and competencies from an early age. And last but not least, promote advanced digital skills development, digital opportunity traineeship, and encourage overall a more consistent participation of women in STEM education practices, and in that sense, of course, foster gender equality. So overall, these objectives work nicely in combination with the European Skills Agenda, where STEM again is one of the 12 actions identified to carry on. So all these actions have the aim of contributing to develop skills and jobs in the complexity of a more greeny and digital kind of economy where we are in. And this is where, of course, STEAM education can have, and already has in some aspects, a crucial point. So for us today, I would just mention additional specific policies that are directly linked to STEAM education, and of course that have informed STEAMonEdu consortium while working on the project. So the first one is the discussion around the higher education programs raised that raised the challenges that Europe's higher education systems are facing. And this is the renewed EU agenda for higher education, that where it is pointed out a mismatch between the skills Europe needs and the skills it has. So many parts of the EU are experiencing shortages in a certain high skill professions, both in terms of qualifications and the quality of the associated skills. So highlighting also in the low level of digital competencies that sometimes graduates have, and very few transversal skills such as problem solving, communication, etc. And it is in there highly recommended to promote and adopt the STEAM approach in the learning programs to further equip the next generations then. So looking at the lifelong learning perspective then, we have to mention in that sense the Council recommendation of the 22nd May 2018 that are of course focused on key competencies for lifelong learning. In there it is underlined the competence needs due to technological infrastructure and service-based modern societies, and the current overall level of knowledge and skills citizens and educators have. So competence requirements have changed with the result of that technologies currently cover a crucial role in society. We all witness that. And entrepreneurial, social and civic competencies have become essential for citizens to adapt to this change. So on top of that, I would say additionally, in the lifelong learning perspective, there are also other policies that we might mention regarding upskilling pathways, the OECD reports and programs that, for instance, highlight the lack of basic skills among both teenagers and adults across Europe, especially in reading, maths, and science. Moreover, on the lifelong learning, same Council recommendation, it is recognized also that learning methodologies such as inquiry-based, project-based, blended arts and games-based learning can increase learning motivation and engagement. So experimental learning, work-based, scientific methods in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, we are back to STEAM in that sense, can foster development of a range of competencies. So taking into account the combination of these fields and competencies, where to include also the arts, so creativity, and look at innovation and motivating, especially young people, is also key within this specific Council recommendation. Last, it's more focused on the school type of environment, where it is referred to STEAM education, where to stimulate the exchange of best practices, promote cooperation between different stakeholders, so higher education, research, businesses, schools, and also thanks to the Erasmus Plus program guide. Erasmus Plus, that's also STEAMonEdu actually have been funded by, as dedicated specific also mention regarding STEAM to support the development of national strategies and also effective and innovative pedagogies and assessment. So where to promote STEAM approach to education through interdisciplinary type of teaching. So just to then wrap up in a sense that European policies are increasing the focus on STEAM education, and this is happening within formal and non-formal training curricula at all levels. And of course, within that, there is the gender balance type of topic both within education and, of course, its impact in the working environment. So being back to what Achilles Kameas already shared, the STEAMonEdu outputs I've been and are linked to that. And of course, we are continuing promoting and exploiting those outputs to enlarge the impact that we already had produced in these last couple of years. So more specifically, thanks to the STEAM Educator Competence Framework, the training program, so the MOOC online training and the blended part of the training program, the STEAM Community of Practice, and the STEAM Readiness Self-Assessment online tool. These are, of course, not just the only ones. These are just the ones more linked, in a sense, with the policies we were mentioning. And so STEAM education, we can close in saying, can be interpreted as an approach to practically translate the green and digital transition within the everyday lives and professionally to enhance sustainable competitiveness at economic level, ensuring social fairness, building on resilience, and of course also provide infrastructure and further develop at all levels, investigating potential other gaps and needs that our society is facing and is needing. So I would close now this session here, and we are all back together. And I would like now to properly, let's say, start the panel discussion. So this was just from my side a more general, let's say, kind of overview. So I would like to mention back all the speakers that we have and kind of invite them to join me. So all STEAMonEdu partners, so Achilles Kameas, our coordinator, and also Esther Subias from Colectic, Paolo Russo from Stati, Generali dell'Innovazione, Athanasios Iossifides, also from Hellenic Open University, Spyros Papadakis from the Greek Ministry of Education, and Laurentiu Bunescu from Fundatia, EOS, Romania. And also I'm going to take part of this with you, as also All Digital was part of the STEAMonEdu partnership, and I am also going to share my screen again, but this time looking at the policy recommendations that we developed together. So I am going to we're going together to see point by point all the policy recommendations, and we're going to discuss with our speakers and further investigate what do we mean, what have we learned from STEAMonEdu project. So the first policy recommendation is the adoption of the STEAMonEdu Educator Competence Framework. We have already mentioned that, and for this reason, I would like to have back Achilles Kameas, asking him what specific needs have we identified and which are the benefits of the framework for educators.
Yeah, after doing an extensive research with the community members, but also with other stakeholders, we came up with a framework that has three levels. The first level contains 5 perspectives based on the roles that the STEAM educator has, and these are STEAM educator is perceived as the person who delivers the teaching, but also the person who creates the content, the person who manages the class, the person who has to collaborate with other colleagues, the person who must be aware of policies and frameworks, also the professional who must develop his or her competencies in order to keep abreast with the developments. After doing this research and analysis, we came up with eventually 44 competencies, which are distributed in these 5 perspectives. Each perspective also contains some groups of competencies we call areas. So we're following more or less the traditional structure of frameworks that is customary in European Commission frameworks. And in this way, we try to provide a complete picture, let's say, of all the competencies that the STEAM educator should develop. As has been said already a couple of times today, STEAM education is a complex approach, a complex method. So any educator who wants to apply this must collect and compile and be able to apply a rather broad set of competencies. Our approach is holistic, is also modular. That is why it can be adapted. It follows standards, and also itself it constitutes a first, let's say, I wouldn't say standardization, I would say prototyping approach towards what STEAM education is from the perspective of STEAM educator. That is why this framework is important, and that is why it can be used as a basis of tools and trainings that have to do with STEAM education.
Thank you very much, Achilles, for this insight. I would move then to the next one. And in the meantime, if from the audience there are any questions, please drop them in the chat, and we will be, after the overview of the policy recommendations, minutes to be dedicated to question and answers. So moving to the second one, so invest in teachers, educators, and educational staff training, adopting the STEAMonEdu program, so namely the MOOC and blended training. I would ask here Athanasios Iossifides to provide an overview of the benefits educators recognized and shared after the training program.
So thank you very much, Claudia, for giving me the opportunity to say some words about the training program that, as you mentioned, consisted of a MOOC and a blended course part. The MOOC took place for 8 weeks in total at the end of the previous academic year, covering all aspects of the STEAMonEdu competence framework that was briefly described by Achilles, starting from the basic concepts of the STEAM approach and focusing especially to these competencies that are not part of the traditional teacher education programs. So in the MOOC, more than 1,000 participants enrolled. 400 out of them participated actively in several parts of the program, and almost 250 of them concluded the MOOC. They were mostly preschool, primary, and secondary school teachers, but they were complemented by non-formal or adult educators as well, and educational managers. And the surprising thing is that the vast majority of them, more than 6% out of them, possessed a master's degree. Now, regarding their evaluation and the benefits that they agreed they have gained, 9 out of 10 of them or more on average agreed that they acquired new skills, new knowledge, access to resources regarding STEAM education, and most importantly, they were able to apply what they have learned throughout the MOOC so that to improve their job. And these 4 things, in fact, were their main expectations out of the MOOC beforehand. It is worth mentioning that in the end, nobody responded negatively to participating in such a program in the future. Now, of course, this remarkably positive stand was the result of a thorough design and a very careful implementation by the consortium, the STEAMonEdu consortium. The participants agreed at a percentage that exceed 90% that the organization, the structure, the learning material were of top quality, and the platform that was used and the tutor support received high positive reactions as well. Now, regarding the blended course, this was an intensive 3-week course for about 50 participants among the ones that have completed the MOOC successfully, and emphasized practical aspects such as the use of LAMS, the use of the STEAM SAT tool that was already referred by Achilles and you, the creation of STEAM policies, so that to involve the participants deeper in the STEAM approach, while in parallel interacting with experts on the field. Now, the results of their evaluation were even better than the MOOC in all aspects, and including, in addition, a very positive reaction to getting it in touch with experts and collaborating with peers. So overall, these 4 things, new skills, new knowledge, access to resources, ability to apply what was learned in the MOOC and the blended course, together with collaborating with peers and getting in touch with experts, were the major benefits out of the training program.
Thank you very much, Athanasios. So far, what seems to be the overall situation is that the need for educators is to expand basically and explore to develop other type of competencies. We are diving and expanding a little bit more on what we were saying regarding complexity, so that there is a combination of competencies that need to be in place. And as we are understanding bit by bit, starting from the framework and also now looking at the training program, I would move forward within this first set of recommendations, and those ones are targeted specifically to education and training providers. So the next one is linked to what also Athanasios was saying in terms of there was the opportunity for participants to have support, and support can come in different ways. It can come from peers, it can come from experts, as of course the mentoring type of activities you were mentioning. So the next policy recommendation is to nurture the STEAM community of practice. And this time I would ask Esther Subias to expand a little bit on the concept of nurturing the community of practice, and that please highlight what kind of dynamics also took place and what sort of activities, materials, discussions, although they have been slightly mentioned by us before, took place in the community.
Thank you, Claudia, for this opportunity to present the community. The community, in fact, has proven through these 2 years project to be a real opportunity for various profiles of educators who are either approaching to work, starting to work with STEAM education and adapting the STEAM education framework or strategy, or that those who are already developing STEAM educational activities. In the last 2 years, and thanks to the community, different profiles of people have published, commented, evaluated, assessed a very important range of educational practices. For the uninitiated, these contents have represented a very important starting point. So they have found good ideas, good solutions that can implement in their context. For the experts, it has been, and it is, an opportunity to improve and disseminate their educational practices, getting more impact and exchanging ideas with other people that really care about the STEAM, and that was very, very important, very good value. I will give you some numbers. It was on the platform, on the community, you can find more than 125 activities that you could use, you could implement There are more than 50 educational policies that you can adopt or you can adapt to your context. More than 725 people were talking about the topic, about these activities, about these policies, and trying to find help, inspiration, ideas to develop their own practices. You won't find a bigger opportunity, a bigger community of STEAM educators, specialists, and that's very, very important. Educators, teachers, workshop leaders, policymakers have had the opportunity to access to this huge bank of educational practices that are carried out in countries through Europe, through all Europe. In some cases, they take them, these inspirational, these practices or policies, and adapt them to their national context or regional context. In other cases, they get inspiration by the possibilities that they can read and see and talk about in the platform, that are real cases, they are based on real practices. Researchers, policymakers, teachers, educators have had the opportunity to share their policies at national, regional, or even school level in such a way that they have been communicated to all the people that is part of the community and the people that might be interested. And it's not only about sharing, but discussing them and getting inputs to improve them. That's very important. That's what makes a community a community of practice, of real practice. If you ask me about the value of belonging and being active in a community like this, I will tell you that it's precious. It's a space to share, discuss, find inspiration, support ideas, instruments that are easily extrapolated to other contexts, and in general to support the STEAM educational practices. The community is very much alive. It's open to new members and new contributions. We have the opportunity to continuously nurture this community, and this only depends on us, on the will of the people who are already in the community or who want to join. So it's very easy. You just need to go to STEAMonEdu.eu website and look for the platform is there, and register or log in again and discover all the content you can use and the opportunity to share your own content. So it's very easy to publish and access and make accessible what you have developed, or even to discuss, to participate in the forum topics and to enrich the community. So it's obvious that all of us, Athanasios, Paolo, Achilles, all of us are really proud of this community that will be, as Achilles says, will continue to be open to new contributions. So our recommendations will be, yes, that to nurture the STEAM community of practice.
Thank you very much, Esther. So you have highlighted, more generally speaking, all the possibilities that might be, in a sense, within a community of practice. So it's not just support, but it's also co-design and exchange practices. It's translating potentially gain from someone else kind of an experience and have support or evaluation, suggestions coming from the others. Of course, for now, I mean, we have seen different levels of activities that we are, in a sense, advocating for that are part of these policy recommendations. So to have tools to provide training, but at the same time also to have a place where to meet and together move forward and shape, we could say, the overall field. So thank you very much. I would move to the next point, that is support cross-disciplinary synergies within the educational organization and between organizations. So we are moving a little bit, let's say, up in terms of the organizational level. And at this stage, I would like to invite Spyros Papadakis to share the approach method to design educational scenarios, highlighting how this could support the adoption of the STEAM approach in education.
Good afternoon. First of all, I would like to thank you for this invitation to participate in this panel. The approach, the first point I would like to make is that we are looking at the STEAM approach and not only the STEM. STEM plus A as art, but not only as art, but A in parentheses as all other disciplines like reading, social studies, etc., and an educational approach to learning that uses science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics as access point for guiding student inquiry, dialogue, and critical thinking. STEM education is far more than just sticking those subjects titles together. It's a philosophy of education that embraces teaching skills and subjects in a way that resembles real life, looking for ways to foster curiosity and love of learning in our children, regardless of ability or their history. The methodology. One of the most questions I'm asking is how to create a STEAM classroom and break down the process. There are different methodology and models that have proposed in literature, like Seasons Ruley propose 6 steps methodology that we have used in some of our examples, and with the steps to be focus, detail, discover, create, share, and link to creating a STEAM-centered classroom, no matter what area you teach. In each step, you are working through both the content and the arts standards to address a central problem or an essential question. The tool, as already mentioned, there are advanced learning technologies like the Learning Activity Management System, the LAMS, that give us tools to share and adapt STEAM educational scenario, but also to create and using STEAM educational template scenarios to create learning designs that helps educators to apply STEAM in their classrooms. And of course, to collaborate between their organizations.
Thank you very much, Spyros, to have provided the overall picture, I would say, within this complexity, because it's not just, of course, an aspect that easily can be inset in, as you said, is a philosophy to be embraced and, of course, translated at all levels. So I want you to stay with me again, Spyros, for this next one. That is support the development of dedicated STEAM infrastructure. So how a STEAM infrastructure would enhance education across organizations, especially at national level within school, between school organizations?
Okay, as we have mentioned before, there is the community of practice that our teachers, our educators from all organizations could collaborate to develop and share their STEAM educational scenarios and practices. These can use as examples to use in everyday life, and but also the infrastructure can be speaking for the Greek school to improve, to have broadband internet connections in all of our schools, or kits for robotics are needed to support the application of STEAM education. These are two examples that we need to give more money for education in Greece and in all other European countries if we need to think for the future and for STEAM education.
Thank you very much. And I think that although maybe details might be different, but the need of a dedicated infrastructure is something that all countries could have the need to have. So this was the first set of policy recommendations, and altogether, so based on the experience that we had and what we produced, that are available on websites, and they can also be adopted, including actually the training. We're going to run a second cycle of the training, so there is the possibility to join that. I would start with the next set of policy recommendations, and those ones address educational policy makers specifically at all levels, so local, regional, national, and European. So the first one is to develop a shared and common definition of STEAM education, harmonizing the meanings and perspectives. Again, Spyros, I want you here for that. So far, the understanding, meaning, and practical translation of STEAM education is fragmented. So how would a common definition support the overall increase in adoption of STEAM education at all levels?
Okay, STEAM education that provides students with an interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary approach to learning, making education real and giving opportunities to see the connection between the content they are studying and the application of the content in authentic activities. STEM education is an experiential learning pedagogy in which the application of knowledge, skills, but attitudes are integrated through in-context projects or problems focused on learning outcomes. STEM education uses new and improved pedagogy approaches, giving students a better understanding of the relevance of STEM to life, linking the world of work in STEM and the classroom. The significant contribution of STEM professions and skills to economic development incorporates teamwork and instruction in the soft skills needed for business and industry. The cultivation of these skills promotes pupil self-confidence, self-efficiency, and help them to become aware of their personal traits and abilities, such as leadership skills. Furthermore, science-aware citizens have the ability to make informed decisions and efficient engage in dialogue on science-driven societal issues.
Thank you very much, Spyros, also for mentioning all the skills that STEAM education type of an approach can promote, especially on learners, where, of course, soft skills, but also that self-confidence that we are also recently witnessing. It's something that should be further developed. I would move now to the next point, that is promotion of the STEAMonEdu educator competence framework. And for this, I would like to have back Achilles Kameas and follow up, in a sense, on what already mentioned before. So what opportunities could the STEAMonEdu educator competence framework provide, specifying all the levels of the benefits possible, so from the local to the European one?
Yeah, as I said already, till now we found that there were limited consideration of the actual challenges that educators face, and that educators need guidance in order to effectively teach STEAM-related courses. That's an outcome of our research during the project, and also we know from the literature that there's a need to reform education system in order to support STEAM education. That is why the STEAM educators competence framework that we developed can have a multi-level role. It can be adopted or adapted, adopted at different levels. It can fill the gap of this lack of common understanding of what STEAM educators have to do. As I said already, we in the framework we have 5 perspectives, 5 roles. I can give you some examples what is contained there so that you can understand why this framework can be a powerful tool. For example, we talk about educator as a learning designer and creator, and there we have some competence areas like course curriculum and activity design, content and tools design and development, learner development, which are very important aspects of educator's job in applying STEAM education. Also, when we talk about educator as an orchestrator and manager, we have the areas of educational procedure management and resource management. Already Spyros before me talked about the need to create the appropriate infrastructure. And then we also include educator as a community member and educator as a professional, which is very, very important for the educators themselves. Therefore, this framework, being modular and being holistic, can become a very important instrument in developing and more importantly, applying STEAM education policies at the European level, but also at national levels. On the other hand, it can serve as a point of reference for different national and local policies and frameworks, which can map onto this, let's say, more abstract framework. We have proven its usefulness and also its usability. We based the design and development of the MOOC and the training content on the framework, also the activities of the blended course. We created the self-assessment tool. So it's not just a framework, but a framework that comes with a tool that allows anybody or any organization to understand to which extent they have the competencies in the framework. And also, we have described STEAM educator profiles based on this framework. So the applicability of the framework has been proved. Of course, we need to go through one or more stages of revalidating the framework. We are receiving comments. We are going to produce new publications, but still the framework is there. One can download it from the website of the project and can see how it can be applied. We are open to comments. The framework is also part of the discussion that's taking place in the community. So whoever is interested in contributing to this, you can join the community, and then we can discuss about the framework.
Thank you, Achilles. And that's why our recommendation is to promote the STEAMonEdu educator competence framework. So on all sides of it, so on its adoptions and also feedback to us, and looking for further developments where needed, if needed, and converge in a sense into not just the STEAM meaning, a kind of definition, but also, of course, the tools and general understanding, methodologies, approaches that can be used. So I would move to the next one, that is support the development of an accrediting certificate of STEAM-related skills for educators. This might be understood in a sense as a follow-up, in a sense, step coming from the framework and potentially also the training where needed. So I would like here to have Achilles Kameas and also Spyros Papadakis asking what added value a certificate could bring at all levels related to STEAM education adoption.
Who should go first?
You decide. You can start, Achilles, if you like.
Okay, thanks, Claudia. We propose this recommendation because we understand that if we want to push STEAM education to become a mainstream educational method, we need also to acknowledge the capacities of people who are already applying it. And that is why an accredited STEAM and recognized, let's say, STEAM certificate for related skills for educators will be a valuable tool. This is a strategy that has been followed also in other domains. I remind the digital skills certificate that is now under consideration. I think we should go along the same way, in the sense that also STEAM competencies are multidisciplinary, and need people to go through a specific procedure in order to acquire them. So not only as a boosting mechanism, but also as a recognition mechanism for those who have already invested in STEAM education and in developing their STEAM capacities.
Okay. Certified educators or ambassadors could contribute to the training, mentoring, facilitation, and support of teachers involved in STEM projects. They will feel more invested in their work and in the achievement of its goals. They will encourage and support the inclusion of STEAM practices in their schools and at regional and at national European level. Also, they can to support and guide other teachers to collaborate and implement STEAM educational scenarios in real practice, and also to identify and promote training solutions and to contribute further to implementing a STEAM action plan of their organizations. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So there are different levels where a certificate in that sense can support. So not just to the educators, but also at the organization level, and also at a more regional or national level, depending, of course, also on countries where the programs are regional or national kind of based. I would move to the next one then. That is organize and facilitate co-design development of policies between policymakers and educators. So we mentioned that within also the blended training, within the STEAMonEdu community of practice, we have involved and engaged, stimulated the community itself to produce and develop policies, as we have found out that there are not so many actually across Europe, especially at local and national level. So I would like to involve Paolo Russo now to support this point by sharing a little bit more the experience of the teachers and educators that are within the STEAMonEdu community of practice in developing policies. And please highlight the benefits that were witnessed and also the collaborative type of development in the case of policies.
Thank you, Claudia, and good afternoon, everyone. And yes, it's a great question, actually many great questions, and it is a bit difficult to give a general answer because what we experienced firsthand working with our community is how diverse is still the European scenario when it comes to educational policy making, because we have countries where everything is decided at a centralized level. The ministry actually decides it. We are other countries like Italy, where single schools or single school districts have a lot of autonomy. And both models have pros and cons, of course. And both have some benefits from community of practices and the opportunity that they give to their members to work together and to elaborate on policies. Of course, the most immediate benefit comes where schools have a lot of autonomy, because the policymaking process becomes immediately a real policy, because they can apply at the school level and or at the school district level. So there is a lot of motivation for teachers to invest part of their time in trying to define policies, STEAM policies. This has a positive impact, but it is a longer process also when the decisions are centralized, because in that case, we are anyway following a grassroots approach. So the experience coming, the ideas coming from these communities can be useful, let's say, to make small tests, to have a direct feedback about what's going on at a small scale, and maybe avoid to spend 2 years to elaborate a very brilliant plan that then you realize that has some holes, as it always happens. And at that point, it is hard to stop the engine and make changes. So this is, I think that the community of practices bring very practical value to the policymaking process at any level. And also, a final remark, they also help a lot to avoid that this policymaking process die. Because usually, well, I can use a phrase from William Gibson, I can borrow it, because STEAM is already here, but it is not evenly distributed. So very often the innovators who want to push forward STEAM education or other innovation, they are alone at their school or in their structure, in their ministry, for example. So being able to connect and to reinforce motivation, to exchange ideas outside of their, let's say, local environment, that's very important, because they don't feel alone and they don't drop the ball because too many challenges to face.
Thank you very much, Paolo. And this is also where the co-design component is helpful in that sense. I would have you with me, Paolo, also for the next one. That is test and harmonize the evaluation processes and systems for both students and educators. On this one, could you identify the clash that educators and students would face in the current situation, where, in the case where evaluation processes and systems don't consider multidisciplinary and their limitations?
This is a clash that I really live on my own skin almost daily when I work with teachers trying to change things, to innovate, because for very good reasons, we have a working model as of today in any school coming from an analytical culture, and so tests are based on experience, on testing, on consolidating information. So basically, all the tests are based on the past experience. And this works very well in a lot of contexts. It has worked very well for centuries by now. The problem is that right now we are living in a society that is in a very quick transformation. It is always accelerating. So the slow process of consolidating this kind of test is no longer working, or better, it's never delivered on time. And the point is that from one side, teachers are stimulated to try to innovate, to try to do something new, but when it comes to tests, they are penalized because the tests are based again on a very analytical model, and instead holistic approaches, stigmatic approaches are not rewarded at all. So this is really, in my experience, one of the biggest showstoppers for introducing STEAM education or innovation at all in the school. And students are not directly hit by this issue, but of course, when teachers not push too much on innovating, on adopting STEAM education for these reasons, of course, they are penalized too as a secondary effect.
Thank you very much, Paolo. And this is why also this point is clearly, let's say, set within our policy recommendations. I would move now to the next one. So develop and support awareness-raising campaign on STEAM-related topics. For this one, I engage with Jutta Schneider and exploring with her the activities carried out currently in Germany, because they are operating in a sense at national level. And she gave me an overview that I'm sharing with you as part of her answer. So in Germany, they have created a lobby of stakeholders from the basis to be able to bring up STEAM education on a political and institutional level. Within that lobby concept, there are educators, NGOs, and mentioning STEAM projects, but also parents that have a passion for this topic, and students themselves. So within that, of course, the communication side, so press and media, is needed to be involved. So just practically, the campaigns that they are running, for instance, on Instagram for young people. And there is an Instagram account that is called s.th. That is like STEAM Magic, where they post and highlight every week astonishing STEAM topic and examples for young people. And looking, for instance, on things like, did you know how colorful chemistry is? Another type of raising awareness campaign are family events. So in all main cities, there are maker fairs, and young people and parents, school classes come there and also showcase STEAM-related projects, visit the exhibitions, and overall get inspired. Last but not least, and this is something that were also developed during STEAMonEdu project, competitions. So at Hollywood, that is also a partner, was the German partner within STEAMonEdu. The initiative they run every year is a competition for students and schools where participants are asked to create a STEAM-related topic. So it could be related to IoT type of devices, robotics, Minecraft, that is also quite popular. And they showcase that for a social-wide outreach. And of course, the winner is then presented and through the social media campaign overall promoted. And within STEAMonEdu project, we did something similar with the photo contest project spread across Europe, and looking at what kind of project at school level educators already, so teachers are already developing. I would move to the next one, that is fund and sustain mentoring events for both educators and education managers and promote STEAM ambassadors. Paolo Russo, please again. So from what we learned from STEAMonEdu project, why mentoring would be of an added value for educators and education managers, what could be the aim of the STEAM ambassadors?
I think that the ended value of mentors is always high when you are moving into uncharted territories, because bringing the STEAM approach, STEAM educational approach to school is still something that is in development. We are still living the heroic age of this, so we need heroes, and in this case, ambassadors and mentors can be heroes with three very important characteristics. So the first one is competence, of course, and experience. Experience is the second one, because people need to rely, people need to also receive hints, tips about the practical way to do things, and of course you feel safer when somebody else already did something and succeeded. So these are two very important characteristics for STEAM ambassadors. And the third characteristic is that I don't know whether this is something that we can certificate, but we should certificate enthusiasm, because they have to really motivate people. They have to be enthusiastic and be able to engage people, because at the moment, whoever is going to invest a part of his time or her career into STEAM education is really making an investment. So it will spend a lot of his or her own time, and you really need to be engaged and enthusiastic about it. So being able to look at the experience, at the example of STEAM ambassadors is really of paramount importance in this moment.
Thank you very much, Paolo. So kind of role models, in a sense, that are able to not just support, but also showcase, in a sense, what is possible then to do and reach. I would move to the next one. We're going to the end of the session. So the development of STEAM national policies and frameworks. I would involve Laurentiu, Bunescu. I haven't forgot you. And on this point, that is a tricky point in a sense. We have mentioned here and there through our discussion about the lack of policies, and also which are a bit the difficulties. Also, looking at a more strategic kind of level when willing to adopt STEAM education. So I would ask you what difficulties countries have in elaborating a national policy, and if there might be any specific needs they should address to facilitate the development of a national strategy on the adoption of STEAM education.
Thank you very much, Claudia. Good afternoon, everyone. Indeed, there seems to be a big gap between policies at EU level and the context you presented earlier, which was really positive, including a lot of policies and also consider recommendations when it comes to STEAM in education. And on the other hand, the policy landscape at national level. At least this is what we discovered by performing this first research of our STEAMonEdu project, in which we have worked in 5 European countries. But on the other hand, identifying STEAM policies is not an easy task, because, as Achilles mentioned earlier, STEAM is a very complex concept that can be quite easily fragmented into many bits and pieces, and this can be embedded in different types of frameworks and policies. So it was quite a challenge to to do this research. However, what we focused on was to identify those policies that encourage an integrated approach towards adopting STEAM into the education. And what we found was that there are very few policies at national level. Even worse, 3 out of the 5 countries we have studied, they had no national framework, strategy, or policy for the adoption of STEAM in education. And besides that, where these policies did exist, there was limited funding available to support the implementation of these policies. What we've seen that is also promising is that these COVID recovery and resilience plans in most of the EU countries are putting aside quite significant budgets for reforming the education systems, and this we see this as a boost to the promotion of STEAM and STEM as well. Another combined factor that we should have into consideration, I think, is this decentralization that was mentioned by Paolo before. Without having the strategic national directions in place. So the decentralization is not, of course, is not a problem. It could be an advantage because it's easier to address specific issues encountered at the regional or a local level. But without having some common frameworks, some and concepts and a common understanding of how to adopt STEAM into education, I think it's more difficult to understand how these regional policies work and if they're efficient. And I think this takes me to the following and the last major issue we have identified, or major challenge, which is actually represented by the lack of interest when it comes to evaluation or impact. It has been quite difficult to track any efficiency or impact that the existing policies have. Even in some of the cases, there were success indicators into place, and these were quite well defined by the policy authors. We couldn't really find out if these have been met or partially met. And maybe just to summarize quickly, because I know we run out of time, and also try to translate these complications into needs. I'd say the countries need to pay more attention to the EU recommendations because this seems to be quite well structured. They need to adopt long-term national strategies or frameworks, an integrated one for adoption of STEAM into education. They need to allocate enough funds to implement these strategies. And of course, to put together methodologies which measure the impact and provide recommendations on what and how to improve. And I think most important, these tools that we have developed in the STEAMonEdu project can definitely help governments, policymakers, and educators in all the EU member states to work out and to work together and develop these policies at national level. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Laurentiu, for this overview and also linking to the different aspects that we have identified through this discussion. I move to the last one, that is the development of a STEAM education app. Maybe this is one of the more forward-looking kind of policy recommendation, at least at European level, that we have included on our list. On these aspects, we have seen the need and the demand on STEM and STEAM type of education, and we have also at different level discussed about this also during this week events of All Digital Week. So follow up in a sense linked to a more centralized kind of an approach. a European, let's say, STEAM education app might support all the activities and also part of the points that we raised today that are part of our policy recommendations. So potentially a common digital platform where to access high quality training activities, and of course tools, additional tools useful to educators at all levels and backgrounds, and also this could support definitely what Laurentiu was also sharing with us in enhancing the national policy developments, also the adoption of a framework, and of course the STEAMonEdu one, the converge into a common understanding regarding STEAM, and generally speaking, converge also professionals, managers, educational managers, and overall policymakers where to move forward the adoption and facilitate overall the adoption of STEAM education. I stop sharing now, as this was the overall overview of the policy recommendations that we developed, thanks also to the experience and the activities that we delivered during the STEAMonEdu project. I'd like to thank you to all the speakers, all STEAMonEdu partners for the support and of course of being here and sharing the insights and facilitate also the understanding of these policy recommendations. And I think now I will give the floor to Victoria. Do I?
Yes, very good. Thank you. I hope you can hear me. So I have a small request before we go to ask you to please turn on your cameras if you wish, so we can get group picture with all the backgrounds. And thank you very much for being with us today. So I will allow a few more minutes for participants to turn on their cameras and smile for the screenshot. All right, I think we're ready. One more person. Let's allow it. Hello, Spyros again, and Gabriela. All right, good. 3, 2, 1. Yes, let me double check before we go if it was good. Yes, perfect. Thank you very much. And thank you for being with us today. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.